The stage is trusting disruption. In trusting disruption, it's important to make sure that we understand that what we're doing is sustainable for our future generations and for our children, right? My name is Eryka Gemma. I opened up a Bitcoin center in downtown Miami in 2018. It was this huge hub of innovation that really sparked what Miami is to be today. And I have some amazing panelists, and we're going to get started about crypto sustainability. So the first question to you guys is, please give a little bit about your background and why it is that you're qualified to talk on the topic of crypto sustainability.
Are we starting with me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm probably not qualified to talk about crypto sustainability. I'm from TradFi, which means when you told me to ditch the suit, I could only ditch part of it. So I run an energy transition fund, and in the process, I've learned a lot about carbon, and we've backed the first carbon-neutral nickel, copper, and lithium mines in the world, and I have a real passion about carbon credits. And I disagree that crypto is unsustainable energy-wise, because we've also invested in some Bitcoin miners who are able to use hydro and other green sources. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks for having us here. My name is Osho. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I'm one of the co-founders of dClimate, which is a decentralized open ecosystem for climate data. We basically enable developers, whether they are part of business, government, crypto companies, to quickly and easily access climate data to build climate tech products. dClimate was born out of another company that I founded called Arbol, where I'm the chief data scientist. Our mission there is to use smart contracts to implement parametric insurance for climate events. And so what we realized was we had gone on this multi-year effort to index and organize the world's climate data and put Earth's climate record on blockchain. And by putting that data out to use, we can spur next-gen climate tech in a data-driven way.
I'm Akbar Shamji, and I'm a historian and a political advisor to governments, and have been for the best part of 20 years on the subject of climate policy and sustainable climate measures. And so what we've watched, more often than not, when I've been in rooms like this or closed-door sessions, they've been advising heads of state or policymakers on what climate science is telling us. And 20, 30 years ago, climate science was telling politicians that by 2030 there needed to be zero carbon emissions on the planet. So government took the very difficult step of pouring hundreds of billions of dollars around the world into renewable energy as a kind of carrot to encourage people to move towards it. And then to support initiatives to bring down their own industrial carbon emissions by their own sort of origination. Of course, what happened was industry just ate the carrot and effectively looted that government capex and kept increasing carbon emissions and growing, and big data came along and swooped it all up. And I was watching this all as a historian and as an advisor, thinking, I can see a huge lane opening up here. Crypto is booming, it's taking up global acceptance. You can't trust fiat money printing anymore. Wow. Crypto's not going anywhere, blockchain's leading the way, and everyone's about to get taxed to death. So 2 years ago, we started deploying CapEx in the north of Norway to connect at high voltage to installations that the Norwegian government had built in the 50s in order to bring hundreds of megawatts of low voltage energy to the ground and use it for crypto mining and data. Now, that was a very tricky 2 years because it was expensive and everyone thought I was mad, because people didn't really believe that the SEC was going to come along and drop a carbon audit and carbon tax on everyone. But with visibility over 30 years of government policy, heavy capex, and very little resultant success within their climate cooling initiative, it was clear. Anyway, about a month ago, you saw all of the historic miners get pretty much decimated, and I think that rot has only just begun for them. But I'm pleased to report that you can invest in Bitzero, which I'm CEO of, and capture all the winnings.
Good afternoon, Rick Fox. I am here in support of my home country. I'm also in support here as a partner with FTX. I'm the co-founder of a company called Partana, which is a carbon negative generating surface materials company. We're set out to disrupt the building industry, the design industry, for materials and structures.
Very cool. So this first question is for Osho and Barbara. One of the biggest FUD pieces around cryptocurrency is the amount of energy that proof of work takes for Bitcoin mining. Now, it's also been said that Satoshi's second gift is green energy. Do you want to explain this Satoshi second gift concept and then maybe some of the misconceptions around Bitcoin mining?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, the idea is Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper on Bitcoin set out a path for how you could decentralize money and how you can create digital assets that you can take custody of, creating a form of property that you can actually own. Now, the second gift is actually an interesting byproduct of the Bitcoin mining mechanism. Proof of work gets a lot of hate, but it is an exceptionally good mechanism for determining the state of the ledger. And so, as a Bitcoin miner mines, their electricity cost is their biggest CapEx expense. And so as Bitcoin's rewards from mining start getting cut in half, for every miner, there is an impetus to figure out how do you cut this cost. And so naturally, this forces a transition towards renewable energies, which are going to be cheaper than traditional sources. And you see this in early day Bitcoin mining as well. A lot of miners moving to Iceland where things were done on geothermal. Ultimately, Bitcoin is good for renewable energy because it also helps promote the construction of much larger and much more capable electric grids because they form a constant source of demand. So I don't know how intentional this second gift is. I would like to believe it was because I love the work of Satoshi Nakamoto. But regardless, I think this is a great consequence of this mining movement.
Anything you want to comment on, Barbara?
No, I think capitalism drives innovation, and it's very positive in the renewable sector.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise there was no incentives for people to create green energy solution other than maybe tax breaks or because they cared about the environment. But now there's a monetary reason for miners to be able to do that. So if this question is for Akbar and Rick, there are a lot of founders here. When they're building their companies, what suggestions do you have to them to keep their companies environmentally friendly, and how high should they rank environmentally friendly in terms of what they're looking at while they're building?
Well, I would start with the bottom line, right? It's a business. You're in business to be responsible, but at the same time to your investors, but also to turn a profit. The best way to turn a profit is to reduce your expenses. If energy is a cost and an expense, I think that the incentive to reduce your energy or to pursue different energy sources, renewable energy sources, would help with that bottom line. So that's the first point. If you have a add on to that?
Very much to that point. So, and I don't think it's really a choice anymore. You know, where should we rank environmentally friendly? I think, particularly in these kind of big digital businesses like Bitcoin, if you are not ahead of the policy curve, you're going to get decimated. So if you're a founder and you're not leading energy thought, if you haven't put CapEx and time into perfecting an energy ecosystem for your business that will escape society's demands for renewable and government's demands for carbon reductions, you just lost your money.
Yeah, I mean, you say that within your company, you stay ahead of some of these policy changes. Like, how do you guys do that, and how can other founders look to do that?
It's amazing how openly available the information is. Climate scientists and climate science are all in complete agreement all around the world. They have been for 25 years. So it's not difficult to pick up any number of journals or papers, read what happened at COP26, read the pre-planning for COP27, 28, and you'll see where governments are going, because they tell you, we're going here. It's not a sort of loose, casual debate. It's mission critical for governments.
I would add to that, but governments are starting to tax carbon, and when you do that, it incentivizes good corporate behavior, not because it's a cute ESG story, because it's a better way to run a company. So for example, in Canada, there's a carbon tax today, it's $45 a ton, and it goes up by $17 a ton every year until it gets to 150. So if you use your CapEx to decarbonize your manufacturing process, you have an edge on all of your peers, and it's better operating leverage, it's more profitable, it's just a better way to run a business.
Yeah, the work that you guys are doing to actually stabilize the carbon credit markets is I think, an incentive to pursue manufacturing materials, opportunities, because once that's stabilizing, the feeling of safety comes into it, which generates more carbon credits, which generates more people searching for more renewable ways to generate energy.
So carbon credit market is a $50 billion industry. How do you guys see blockchain making this more accessible? Like you said, stabilizing?
Yeah, stabilizing. Yeah, stabilizing it, the safety and comfort with which I think industry will be generated around the markets will allow for the actual utilization of those funds to go back into industry, greater manufacturing. Barbara knows of this as well, the ability to use those credits to the benefit of growing your company.
And what happens in the current carbon credit markets? Are there fake carbon credits out there? Like, I don't know too much. Yeah.
So one of the interesting things with the voluntary carbon market, at least, is that there's a growing demand, particularly from corporates and countries that want to be carbon neutral by 2030, 2040, 2050. They've set a lot of ambitious goals, but the supply isn't necessarily getting online quickly enough. And part of that is because in the analog world, verification is still done manually and very slowly. So one of the consequences that we found of putting Earth's climate record on chain is that we can build next-gen offsets, which are digital assets by nature. So we're, in the next couple of weeks, going to be publicly announcing a system we call dClimate Cyclops. Cyclops will be open source, and it has the ability to take a satellite image of a forest and compute the amount of carbon on there. And so now when you're talking about particularly old growth tropical rainforest in areas where it's very difficult to do manual verification, you can do instant verification, tokenize the carbon, and now you have the digital carbon offset that companies can trade. It's an actual asset they can hold. And in return, countries or individuals will get cash flow for long-term preservation because we're doing constant monitoring as opposed to a one-time retirement. And so ultimately what we hope this results in is pay for preservation. Long-term preservation of natural assets is incredibly important. And if we can monetize natural assets without destroying them, I think this becomes a revolutionary shift.
So that brings me...
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to put a question back to you both, because that's sort of fiercely interesting. I just wanted to know whether that's being integrated with the kind of big accounting companies and the audit process, or how you could get it there, because if you could get it there, that would be groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things with the verification is that when you do it on chain, you naturally have a registry built in. Now, when you open source the data and you open source the models, you know, many traditional businesses would look at it as you're giving away your IP. But that's okay, because now we have an open verification system. Any climate scientist, any data scientist, anyone can pull down data or propose even a better model, perhaps, right? Where we make our money would be with the origination of the offsets and managing vintages of offsets that can then be further tokenized and create carbon derivatives and this idea of carbon-backed money. And so this is something that I love about blockchain and Web3 as a whole. What blockchains did for open source software, they're doing for all public goods, which is they bring a way of monetizing public goods by aligning incentives. So we have found a way to monetize this process while maintaining open source code, and I think that's ultimately beneficial for more market participants because they know exactly what they're buying and they don't have to trust a third party to tell them what they're buying.
I will say, though, all carbon credits have to be independently audited, and that is part of the integrity of a credit. I have a view that carbon is the currency that is going to fund the energy transition, and whilst preserving and restoring our natural resources. And in order for it to be a currency, it needs to be, you need to be able to verify it, which the blockchain is fantastic for. We can say this credit came from this acreage of mangrove or seagrass. And then I think you can also apply AI to that credit so that you can monitor it over the course of its lifetime to ensure it did what you said it would.
Yep.
And so when you add transparency and you get rid of the greenwashing fears, and when it's digitized and can trade 24/7 and settle globally, now we have a currency. And then we can apply the principles of corporate finance to countries. And this is what gets me really excited is the intersection of traditional finance and blockchain. And I call this refi, so regenerative finance.
Yeah, and talking about that, because we are now monetizing data sets, right, that you said are constantly being pulled from these satellites. But let's talk about the oracles. So that connection, if it's garbage in, garbage out, it's bad data on the blockchain, then you're pulling information that's bad. How do oracles play a part with AI to make sure that we're getting good information?
Yeah, so we use oracles both at Arbol and dClimate extensively, and we use them in a variety of ways. And in fact, when we were first building Arbol back in 2018, there wasn't a lot of great Oracle systems available, so we actually built our own, and then later scrapped that to work with Chainlink, which has built a phenomenal solution for the Oracle problem. So for anyone who's not aware, the purpose of an Oracle is to pull data into a smart contract. And that brings tremendous value because smart contracts' inherent security comes from the fact that they're isolated from the rest of the world. But in order to build bigger applications, you need to feed in data. So we rely on a lot of publicly available data. So in the case of Arbol, when a client comes to us to get data-driven insurance against a climate event, maybe it's a resort like Bahamar, they might come to us and say, we're worried that when it's too windy and too sunny, we lose revenue. And so they'll hedge those two risks with us. The smart contract lives in our internal infrastructure and pulls in solar radiation and wind speed data. This same data can be used to sell coverage against electricity production to renewables farms, wind farms, solar farms, or even to a BTC miner because we can do it all on chain and they can pay their premium in BTC or fiat, it's their choice. So that's one use case of an oracle. In the case of carbon, what you would ideally want to do with the oracle is essentially make the computations against the satellite data and pull that on chain so that you can verify the AI algo that is calculating how much carbon there is within this tract of forest. And so once you give that baseline data, which was collected by NASA or maybe the Japanese Space Agency or maybe even a private satellite, once you have that data on chain, anyone can access that, then they can trace the actual calculations of the AI algorithm, so it helps remove some of the black box nature of it. And if they have a better idea for how it can be computed, or perhaps they go on the ground to collect actual measurements using hardware, you can start updating those models. And so oracles and blockchain actually give you a ton of flexibility when constructing these offsets or these insurance contracts, really any digital asset that you're trying to create.
Very important. So let's say that you're getting data for these countries, and now these countries are able to participate in corporate finance. I love that you said that, just based off of what they're doing environmentally friendly. Now we are in Bahamas. It's beautiful here. Rick, what's happening right now? Probably getting discussed right now in the legislature.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to commend our Prime Minister on today's introductory welcome speech. It shows, once again, as a country, we are leaders in disruption. We are open for disruption. It's our history. And that takes courage, right? And that also speaks to FTX. It speaks to their setup here on our ground here, choosing to disrupt the industry and to lead the industry forward from the Bahamas. So you're welcome. Those that are here, please move, join, bring your businesses. We support it. Second of all, the Prime Minister just released a carbon initiative bill. So as we are forward thinking when it comes to blockchain and crypto, we're also now moving into the forward thinking processes of around the carbon credit markets. So as a co-founder of a company with my partner Sam Marshall, we are leading in the creation of materials that will change the construction industry, which will offset a whole bunch of carbon credits. What we'd like to do is see those carbon credits not only create an industry here in this country, which I care about because it's my home, but also have those carbon credits be something that our country can benefit from as well. So the sooner we stabilize the carbon markets, the more safety and security we'll feel as a whole, the more money will flow into, and the cycle will continue to flow. And I think blockchain will have a huge part in that creation of that safety.
And what are some of the solutions you guys are all providing in the green energy sector? I mean, you said that you're creating green building materials. That's awesome and necessary, right? How about everybody else?
I'd just like to go back to rounding that off, and obviously big up the Bahamas.
Oh, yes.
Everyone likes to be here. You know, that's the most incredible work you guys are doing, and it is a massive future answer, the whole thing, the carbon currency and the visibility into what really is and isn't happening. I guess going back to that historian and kind of political advisor and policy analyst hat, it's critical that you get government audit support early, because you'll make all the solutions and it'll take them 10 years to understand it. So let's say with a fair wind, you're 2 or 3 years out from what we as a voluntary human society will trust one another for. Institutional capital is not going to be able to support you the way you want it to, when really they should be helping you from now. I'm sure they are, but they should be, every human being should be wanting what you're doing. So I would maybe just get them involved and tell them to get involved if they're not.
Are there specific policy changes you guys think should be implemented in the United States or any other country that make more crypto sustainable mining attractive?
I was just going to say, very disappointing news today that the New York State Assembly has voted to ban Bitcoin mining. I think it's short-lived, and
they already have the bit license. It's okay.
I know. It's you know, there was some expectation that this would possibly happen, and it hasn't been turned into official law. It still needs to go through a couple more rounds of voting. But really, the perception that mining or that cryptos are bad for the environment is very unfair, and it's inaccurate. So I'm excited by the work that's being done by the regenerative finance movement in general to help take that image back. I think a lot of the changes that blockchain spurred in people understanding their own ability to custody property and provide liquidity, the changes it made to traditional financial systems by offering alternatives that are still growing, can hopefully extend to this narrative of being bad for the climate. Because one unfortunate thing is we have a lot of conferences, the COP26s of the world, and there'll be a COP30 and a COP35, but ultimately you see that there hasn't been enough change on the climate action front, and hopefully, the stage is called Trusting Disruption, so hopefully some tech can disrupt that and make that change happen faster.
I'd just like to add that I want to commend the community here, because they're not running away from this conversation. They're in pursuit of evolving to a better solution. But there are multiple industries that are needing to do that, right? When you talk about the climate at large, that's a challenge that we're all faced with, not just one industry. I just think that the fact that we're out in front trying to find the solutions and are actually moving towards them, there's also something that should be commended about that. So, obviously your patience is required. You can only move so fast, right? But I think the vision of the job is ahead of us, and we see it.
Yeah, and there is that economic principle of voting with your feet, right? Moving to the places of the world that you like what laws are being passed. So you're going to see this exodus continue to happen from states like New York to places like the Bahamas, to places like Dubai, to places like Miami that are being very forward-thinking. They're attracting this new and different type of talent. And then I just feel like policy changes need to happen where, not need to happen, I mean, I would getting rid of policy is probably the best, but let's say that making sure that federal law doesn't create restrictions for the states, because the states as individual states can make their own laws, and then we're going to see how industry will reward that, right? So back to my other question, what are you guys building in sustainable energy? What have you seen? What are you excited about with green energy solutions and mining in general?
I'll just go really quick. I signed an NDA, but I saw something the other day that was pretty amazing. In an energy capacity, I'd like to see it here on our floor, on our grounds and our waters. And so something's on the way. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, for our part, we've been looking globally at previous governmental deployments of capital into renewable infrastructure that either hasn't been finished or is no longer used by the military or just hadn't quite been finalized. And in many cases, the lion's share of the really heavy capex has been done. And so energy-heavy industries can sort of follow the example. And again, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of investment to perfect your energy supply. And I didn't mean to take anything away when I said that, away from the importance of optimizing energy efficiency within your specific business ecosystem or operational strategy. I was more coming at it from the overall energy infrastructure. And coming from that perspective, which is the main one as a Bitcoin miner, because innovation in ASIC chips, for example, or immersion cooling, there's one or two verticals and there are huge houses working on it, and we will always find the best ones. But kind of at large, racing after the quickest bit of energy you can find for as many miners as you can put into it, it's a fast road to bankruptcy. Taking a moment to partner with the government, do a little research. I mean, these are companies with huge balance sheets that could walk into Wells Fargo Bank and pull down $1 billion, and within 18 months of work, have 5 gigawatts of government partnership, brand new clean energy, but they're not doing it because they're chasing the next quarter's results. And as a society, we can't really think like that anymore. So what are we doing with, for example, I was in North Dakota, amazing state. They are driving innovation around hydrogen generation and storage. They're perfecting catalytic processes to allow the hydrocarbons industries to make themselves zero carbon emissions. But they've also, on the First Nations lands, already got the infrastructure for, dams and hydro. And so we've been able to go in and make the explorations and put those deals together, partner the capex, and demonstrate that it's there. And going forward, we're going to share all of that information and invite other people from our sector to join us.
On our end, we on the Arbol side, we do a lot of coverage for renewables companies, ranging from wind speed, solar, water levels for hydro, water temp for nuclear. And this has a global footprint. There's a lot of demand across the world. And so there,
Wait, so to be clear, Arbol is an insurance company that underwrites green energy?
Well, we do anything that's data-driven insurance, and we focus on climate-related coverage. And so we operate with agribusinesses, energy companies, leisure, all sorts of different verticals. Energy is a huge part of our business. We do a lot of work with utilities, and over the past year, we really developed a brand for ourselves by hedging the climate risk that renewable energy producers create. Because it's great to have a wind farm, but if in your area there's not enough wind speed, you won't generate the electricity and get the revenue that you're looking for. So we can do the hedging of not just that wind speed, but even the production, because it's all data-driven. And so that data lives on dClimate, which lives on-chain. And so recently on the dClimate side, part of the renewable energy story that's become really exciting is we are working with turbine manufacturers to do more turbine level forecasting of energy production, and also new forms of renewable energy. So green hydrogen has been talked about a lot. Cool. It's the idea that you can create hydrogen, which can be used as fuel, but you create it using renewable sources. So we were tapped by the country of Namibia through their main university to be the exclusive verifiers of their green hydrogen production. They're building, I believe, the largest green hydrogen production plant in the world, slated to go online in 2025. And they're going to power it all with wind and solar from the coastal desert area. So first we come in and we verify the amount of energy being produced. Then secondly, we have an opportunity to really set a standard here where we can relate the production of hydrogen to carbon prevented. And it's actually similar to some of the stuff you were talking about, and it's very cool because in one of my first calls with them, they also wanted to track the carbon used in the materials for building. What's in the concrete, what's in the metal, right? So right now, governments haven't really set forth a way to think about this. So the market has an opportunity to set up a structure that says, for every 1 ton of green hydrogen that you create, you've prevented X tons of carbon from being thrown into the atmosphere. You monetize that, now that makes building a green hydrogen plant even more attractive because you can get paid to build this. You can source funding to build this by pre-selling credits. There's a lot of exciting work happening in that area.
I agree, as Larry
Rick looks excited.
I get excited. It's so cool.
Yeah, I like Rick's company. As Larry Fink said, the next 1,000 unicorns aren't going to be search engines. They're going to be in green hydrogen, green cement, green building materials. So I run an energy transition fund, so I think every investment we have would be applicable to this subject matter, and very passionate about all of them. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of right now is our firm's engagement with several countries on advising them on mapping the country of opportunities in terms of carbon credits, and going in and not only advising on how, but offering to fund and list, and trying to see this from the perspective of a country who wants the most that they can get from their natural resources, because other people historically have approached this from the perspective of a company who's just trying to buy credits for as cheap as possible. And so that's something that I think can really be deeply impactful for many countries.
The regulated, sustainable market is going to change the game.
Yeah.
100%.
Plus, also the ability for individuals who maybe don't have the ability to buy Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies on the open market, but they do, have some technical experience. They can plug a miner in and get clean, non-KYC Bitcoin that they mined themselves, that they know the history of. So there's all these, I feel like, opportunities that happen in emerging nations. This is why you see Bitcoin so adopted in Venezuela. And it's just because people have different opportunities. Now, what I love, the solutions that I've seen created because of Satoshi's second gift is immersion mining, and then also the excess gas, the waste gas that's made from when you're drilling for oil is now directed towards Bitcoin miners. Are you guys seeing anything in that innovation side that you're super excited about?
So one of the things that we're doing at every plant we build is to capture the excess heat from the data centers and plug it directly into educational programs and greenhousing. Okay, typically, these hydro plants can be in very remote and slightly sort of unforgiving areas. And the populations there might need winter food, they might need education, they might need training in these things. And thus far, data centers have let the heat just go. Whereas the computers are basically a pass-through and a conversion for the electricity into heat. You get almost all the energy going through the computers and out to nowhere. It's not a huge bolt-on to capture it and put it to work. In West Africa, we were consulting data centers on technology to recapture the heat, turn it into refrigeration, and then have vaccines and medicines available, which otherwise they couldn't store in those areas, and people are, suffering everything you would suffer without those things. In Norway, it's specifically tomatoes, because they're not available in the north, and they like to eat them. In North Dakota, the plans are to work very closely with the First Nations. Anyway, heat capture to create something useful, sorts of thinking. And to your point about the CO2 capture, North Dakota is really driving some amazing use for driving CO2 back down into the ground and then storing it in their unique geology. So I do think there's a lot of great stuff going on.
Yeah, you're really seeing the revamping, I would say, of old industries that are now using Bitcoin mining as a way to continue to monetize, right?
When I was at Bitcoin Miami, not this year, but last year, there were a number of CEOs of listed Bitcoin miners on the stage, and they got into a bit of a disagreement on, was a sustainably mined Bitcoin worth more than another? And to me, the answer to that is no, it's a commodity, but the company that is mining in a more sustainable manner is worth more. And particularly now with the SEC coming down and hard on wanting a carbon footprint, et cetera, companies that don't have to buy carbon offsets are inherently have higher margins. And so I can think of two companies off the top of my head that are listed and green miners of Bitcoin. One's Bitfarms in Canada, and they use hydro, and the other is kind of an interesting one, Stronghold, where they're using the coal tailings, and there's enough BTU in there to mine a Bitcoin, and there's no other way to get rid of those tailings other than to mine them. And because it's a vertically integrated mine, in my opinion, they're the cheapest producer, lowest cost producer of Bitcoin that I know of in the public market. So I like when capitalism drives better business models.
So last question, then I'm going to let you guys let the audience know where they can find you if they want to find out more information. But maybe there's some people in the audience who are interested in providing sustainable crypto mining. Is there any key energy features that you feel like they should look at before they start investing? Maybe not financial advice, but some investment tips for people that want to get involved in crypto mining, but sustainably, of course, because that's the panel. Or maybe not sustainably.
I think everything that the panel has said, I think all sort of points in the same direction around that answer. So looking for energy that you have proprietary ownership of for as long as possible, at the lowest possible cost, at zero carbon displacement penalty to the rest of society. So, if you go into an energy ecosystem, let's say a town with 100 megawatt feed, mixed coal, oil, gas, 60% renewable, and you pile in there and take 20% of the renewable out, the first thing that's going to come up is more coal and more oil. If you're a non-essential industry, they're going to come for you going forward under the policies. So you have to bolt on your own energy supply contribution in the most efficient way if you want longevity at low cost.
I think also it's important to remember that the hardware is constantly improving, right? The first gen ant miners were way more inefficient and way less powerful than the current gen ant miners, and just using ant miners as an example. So I think even on the hardware side, Bitcoin mining will have its Tesla or its iPhone moment where
you're seeing IBM's coming out with their chip that's supposed to be 1,000 times better.
Yeah, you start seeing bigger companies, bigger semiconductor manufacturers getting into this. I actually have a friend who's, interestingly, he's working on mining Bitcoin using photonics chips. So there's all sorts of ways that, and it comes back to what we were talking about originally, which is as soon as you improve that efficiency, you are inherently running a better business, right? And so there's a lot of research and development going into that.
Rick, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would encourage you guys once again to spend your energy with people that are in the solution search, not spending too much time on the problem in the sense that they're complaining about it, right? Find yourself in countries with leaders that are progressive around legislation, the Bahamas, that will work with you to move that forward so that we, at the end of the day, are growing in the right direction collectively around climate and sustainability. And that's what I would challenge you to do. Join us in the fight to find the solution.
Yeah. And don't invest in any Bitcoin mining companies unless you see a power contract. Do not get scammed. So you just want to share where they can find you? Go ahead, Barbara.
Sorry?
Where they can find you if they wanted to get in contact. Or maybe your company website, whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Yeah, so we're just Wincrest Capital. We're actually a Bahamian firm. So it gives me, I'm so proud of this conference. Our country was really hurt by the pandemic. We're predominantly a tourism-driven industry, so this just fills my heart. We need more of this. This is the right type of diversification for this country, so thank you to everyone who came and supported the conference. So I'm Wincrest Capital, and I think where's www.wincrest.capital, actually. Very simple.
You can find me on LinkedIn, pretty active there. Of course, because I'm in Web3, I'm also active on Twitter. You can join dClimate's Discord, start working with that data. On the Arbol side, we're over at arbolmarket.com, and on dClimate, it's dclimate.net. So I invite everyone to join our Discord and start building with data.
Bitzero.com. Bitzero.com.
You can find me in the Bahamas, right here. You can find me with leaders and like-minded people that have the courage, like FTX, and the rest of you here that care about this mission. And you can find me at partana.com as we disrupt the building industry with our surface materials that are carbon negative. We're going to build homes. We're going to change the world for the better. And it's going to take time. The more of a community we have, the shorter that time will be.
Awesome. We'll give it up for our panelists, you guys. Good job. Thank you. That was fun.